Some people find their church in a building with a steeple. Some find it on a golf course or at the bottom of a whiskey glass. My church? My church was a 10-year-old, sun-faded plaid outdoor couch with a suspicious stain near the left armrest that looked vaguely like the state of Florida. And on this perfect Saturday, I was in the middle of a sermon. The sun was that perfect, lazy, 72-degree kind of warm. The air smelled like my neighbor Dave was mowing his lawn 3 streets over. Just a hint of cut grass, not an oppressive hay fever-inducing cloud. My wife, Sarah, had just handed me a beer so cold the bottle was sweating more than I was. I was horizontal. My feet were up, my head was nestled into the foam, which, after a solid decade of service, had compacted into a perfect, custom-molded cradle for my skull. This couch wasn't a piece of furniture. It was a time machine. It was the vacation we couldn't afford. It was the physical embodiment of the word relax. We called it the mothership. You know, I said, taking a long pull from the bottle, I think this might be it. The peak. I don't think human existence gets better than this. Sarah, who was perched on the porch railing repotting a fern, smiled without looking up. You said that last week when you found an onion ring in your French fries. That was a different kind of peak, I argued. That was a culinary miracle. This is spiritual. This is bliss. This is a... Oh no, I ignored the interruption. This is a symphony of suburban... Mark, no, she said, her voice dropping to a hiss. She's coming. 5-second warning. Sit up and look respectable. Respectable? I am respectable. I'm a tax-paying homeowner enjoying his item. I refused to move, a captain defiantly going down with his ship, or in this case, defiantly staying on his ship. Then, I saw her, the harbinger of doom, the sultan of beige, the reason our mailboxes are all the exact same soul-crushing shade of greyga. Carol. Carol wasn't just a person. She was a force of nature, if nature was an overbearing homeowners association president with a clipboard and a visceral hatred of joy. She was power walking, which was her only mode of transportation, her sharp-angled visor cutting through the gentle afternoon air. Tugging at the leash in her hand was her dog, Sir Reginald. A rat-like creature with bulging eyes that, I'm convinced, shared her single, judgmental brain cell. She walked past my house every day at 4:15 p.m. Usually she just glanced, sniffed, and moved on. But today she stopped. It was a full, dead-in-her-tracks stop, like she'd seen an active crime scene. She tilted her head. Her visor remained pointed at me, a beige triangle of judgment. I could feel her eyes, which I assume were somewhere under the brim, scanning the mothership. She looked at my beautiful, comfortable, perfect couch, the same way you'd look at a dead possum on the side of the road. A mixture of disgust and, I don't know, offense, like my couch had personally insulted her ancestors. Just smile and wave, Sarah whispered, her hands frozen in the potting soil. I'm not waving, I whispered back. That's a sign of weakness. I'm employing active stillness. It's a defensive maneuver. Carol's eyes narrowed. She took one step, onto the edge of my lawn. I felt a primal urge to yell, "Get off my property!" But I restrained myself. Sir Reginald, sensing his owner's agitation, let out a pathetic, wheezing yap. Slowly, almost theatrically, Carol reached for the pink clipboard permanently affixed to her left hand. She uncapped a pen, And then, with the deliberate, agonizing slowness of a villain in a bad movie, she started writing. Scribble, scribble, scratch. She looked up, scanned the couch one more time, and made another note. "What is she doing?" I hissed. "She's documenting," Sarah said, her voice tight. "She's documenting the crime." "What crime? The crime of being plaid? The crime of existing?" I sat up, the spell of the afternoon officially broken. The beer in my hand suddenly tasted flat. After what felt like an hour, Carol capped her pen. She gave the house one last, lingering look of disapproval, tugged Sir Reginald's leash, and power-walked away. The silence that descended on the porch was heavy. "Oh, God," Sarah said, finally dumping the fern into its new pot. "What now?" I flopped back down onto the mothership, patting its sun-warmed cushion. "Relax. What's she going to do? Fine me for excessive comfort? Send me a letter about flagrant relaxation?" Sarah gave me a look. "You are a lovable idiot, but I am very serious right now" look. Don't tempt her, Mark. You know how she is about the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. Remember what she did to the Millers over their unapproved wind chimes? That was different. Those things were loud, and they were tuned to a non-traditional scale. "This," I said, spreading my arms wide, "this is aesthetic harmony. It's harmonizing my butt with this cushion. It's a statement piece." "It's a statement, all right," Sarah muttered. "And I think it just said something very rude to the HOA president." I took another drink. The sun was still shining. The beer was still cold. But the vibe was gone. Carol had torpedoed my bliss. I stared at the spot where she'd stood, a faint, imperceptible disturbance in the suburban force. I felt a shiver of unease, but I pushed it down. This was my castle. That was my couch. "What's the worst that could happen?" I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Oh, Mark, you sweet, stupid summer child." 3 days passed. 3 days of glorious, uninterrupted couch-sitting. I'd convinced myself the incident was just a classic Carol power flex, a little warning shot to remind us who ran Crestview Meadows. I'd even started to relax. That was my first mistake. It was Tuesday. I was retrieving the mail, which usually consists of 3 credit card offers, a flyer for a pizza place I'll never order from, and approximately 8 pounds of coupons for stores that don't exist within a 100-mile radius. But this time, there was something else. It wasn't a normal envelope. It was crisp. It was cream-colored. The cardstock was so thick and heavy, you could have used it to bludgeon a small animal. It felt judgmental. In the top left corner, embossed in a tasteful, i.e., boring, gold font, it read, "From the desk of the Crestview Meadows Homeowners Association." My blood pressure spiked. My stomach did a little flip-flop. I walked back into the house, holding the envelope between my thumb and forefinger as if it were a dirty diaper. Sarah was at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner. The thwack, thwack, thwack of the knife was the only sound. "It's here," I said, my voice unnaturally high. She stopped mid-thwack. "What's here?" "The letter." I placed it on the granite countertop like it was a live bomb. Sarah wiped her hands on a towel and picked it up. She didn't open it. She just stared at the logo. "Well, this is it. The end of the Miller wind chimes. The sequel." "Just open it," I said. "Let's rip the Band-Aid off." She slit it open, not with a letter opener, but with the giant chef's knife she was still holding, which I found both terrifying and appropriate. She pulled out a single, matching cream-colored sheet of paper. She cleared her throat and began to read. "Dear resident," she began in a flat, emotionless voice, "it has come to our attention—" "Oh, I hate that," I interrupted. "It has come to our attention, like it was a passive, accidental discovery." "No, you came to its attention, Carol. You marched onto my lawn and stared at it." Sarah shot me a look. "May I continue?" "Proceed." "It has come to our attention that a piece of non-compliant, indoor-style furnishing has been placed on the front-facing porch of your property." I scoffed. "Indoor style? It's an outdoor couch. It's literally made of wicker and weatherproof-ish fabric. Where does she think I bought it? The living room section." "Shh, it gets better," Sarah said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "This item, I yelled, throwing my hands up. "Now it's an item. It's the mothership. It has a name. Show some respect." This item not only violates Bylaw 4.7b regarding porch and patio aesthetics, but has been deemed by the Architectural Review Committee. She paused for dramatic effect. "Deemed what?" I asked, leaning in. "Deemed too awesome? Deemed a threat to her beige regime?" Sarah looked up from the letter, her eyes wide with a kind of horrified glee. "It's been deemed tacky." I stared. The word hung in the air. Tacky. Not non-compliant, not in disrepair, not unapproved. Tacky. We looked at each other for a solid 5 seconds. And then we broke. We burst out laughing. It was the hysterical, can't breathe, clutching the countertop kind of laughter. "Tacky!" I howled, wiping a tear from my eye. "Tacky? From a woman who wears a visor? Unironically, a woman who, I have on good authority, owns an entire army of creepy-ass garden gnomes she hides in her backyard?" "Shh, she'll hear you," Sarah giggled, collapsing into a kitchen chair. "The gnome sanctuary is grandfathered in. You know that. It's in the addendums." "And what about the Petersons' house?" I was pacing now, fully indignant. "They have an entire flock of those pink plastic flamingos. A flock? How is that not tacky, but my majestic plaid mothership is?" "Mark," Sarah said, her laughter fading. "The flamingos are also grandfathered in. They were here before the great beigeification of 2011. I snatched the letter from her. My laughter was gone, replaced by a cold, simmering rage. The word tacky felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't a bureaucratic judgment. It was a personal one. Carol was calling my taste bad. "What's the rest?" I growled. I scanned the bottom of the page. "You have seven days from the date of this letter to remove the offending item." There it was again. "Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $50 to be assessed against your property." $50? Sarah yelped. "A day?" "This is tyranny," I announced to the kitchen. "This is taxation without representation. This is a war." Sarah stood up and put her hands on my shoulders. "Okay, let's calm down, General Patton. It's a couch. It's an old stained couch. We can get a new one. A nice, compliant, wicker love seat. It's not worth the fight." I looked at her. And she was right, of course. She was the reasonable one. It was just a couch. It was stained. That Florida-shaped stain was, in fact, the result of a very unfortunate root beer float incident in 2019. It would be so easy to just give in. But as I looked at that letter, at that perfectly chosen, surgically precise word, tacky. I knew I couldn't. This was no longer about a couch. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about honor. This was about freedom. This was about the fundamental right of a grown man to sit on a piece of plaid-covered foam on his own damn property. She called it tacky, Sarah, I said, my voice low. I know, she said, her expression softening. No, you don't understand. She didn't have to use that word. She chose it. That was a shot. That was a declaration. I folded the letter, crisp and neat. It's moving to the garage? She asked hopefully. Oh, it's moving, I said, a dark, unfamiliar, and deeply petty part of my brain waking up from a long slumber. But this isn't over. This is just an armistice. I'm a reasonable guy. I like to think of myself as a peaceful man. My default setting is live and let live, especially if living involves a comfortable seat and a cold beverage. So, before escalating to DEFCON 1, I decided to try diplomacy. I would go to the mountain. I would speak to the oracle. I would try to reason with Carol. This was my second mistake. I knew I couldn't ambush her at her home. That's a rookie move. In her beige and khaki castle, she'd have the home field advantage. I needed neutral territory, or as close as I could get. I found her holding court by the community pool. It was a Thursday afternoon, her official HOA oversight day. The pool area was her domain. She wasn't swimming, of course. Carol didn't seem like the getting wet type. She was sitting under a large umbrella, wearing a different-colored visor, a pale, sickly yellow, and reviewing the state of the lounge chairs. I watched for a moment as she stalked over to a group of teenagers and informed them that their music, which was playing at the volume of a sleeping mouse, was 3 decibels above the approved community sound level. This is fine, I told myself. She's a person. She puts her beige culottes on one leg at a time, just like everyone else. I took a deep breath, straightened my World's Okayest Dad t-shirt, and walked over. Carol, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. She looked up from her clipboard, and her eyes, when they finally focused on me, were as warm as a freezer burn. Mr. Henderson. She didn't smile back. You're not on the approved pool use list for today. Right. No, I'm not here to swim. I just wanted to talk to you for a minute. About the letter. A flicker of something passed over her face. Triumph? Satisfaction? Yes. The letter. I assume the item has been removed? That's what I wanted to talk about, I said, trying to keep the aw shucks neighborly charm going. Carol, I think there's been a misunderstanding. That's an outdoor couch. I bought it from an outdoor furniture catalog. A catalog, she repeated, as if I'd said I'd summoned it from a demonic dimension. Mr. Henderson, outdoor is a classification. It is not a shield. The intent of Bylaw 4.7b is to maintain the visual and aesthetic integrity of Crestview Meadows. And I'm all for integrity, I said, a little too loudly. A nearby toddler stopped splashing. Love it. Big fan. But my couch? Your sofa, she corrected, is a blight. A blight? A blight? Like I was harboring the bubonic plague on my porch? Carol, I tried again, lowering my voice. It's comfortable. My wife and I, we sit on it. It's where we unwind. People sit on porches. That's what they're for. It is indoor furniture, she stated, tapping her pen on the clipboard. It is faded. It is, frankly, dilapidated. It has, and I quote directly from my report, which was ratified by the committee, "a visible and significant stain resembling the state of Florida." I blinked. That stain is root beer from 2019, and it's faded. It looks more like, I don't know, Georgia by now. "The geography of your stain is irrelevant," she said, her voice dropping to an icy monotone. "I am the head of the Architectural Review Committee. We have bylaws for a reason, and I deem what is appropriate and in keeping with our community. That couch is not." This was it. The checkmate. She wasn't an administrator. She was a dictator. A tin-pot tyrant of a 300-home subdivision. But what about your gnomes?" I sputtered. The air temperature around the pool dropped 10 degrees. "What?" she said. "Did you say?" "Your gnomes," I said, pointing vaguely toward her house, which was 2 streets over. "The War Gnome Sanctuary in your backyard. I've seen it. There are like 50 of them. One of them is fishing in a non-existent pond. How is that in keeping with anything?" Carol's smile was thin, cold, and utterly terrifying. "My gnomes, Mr. Henderson, are in my backyard, shielded from public view by an approved 6-foot privacy fence. And more importantly, they were grandfathered in." Of course they were. The ultimate HOA trump card. "So that's it?" I asked, defeated. "It's just because I said so?" "It's because the bylaws, which I interpret, say so," she corrected. "You have 7 days, Mr. Henderson. That letter was mailed on Monday." She glanced at a tasteful, beige-banded watch. "Which means you have 4 days left. The clock is ticking. Have a lovely afternoon." She turned back to her clipboard, a clear, unmistakable dismissal. I was checkmated. I was routed. I stood there for a full minute, smelling like chlorine and failure. The teenagers had even turned their music off, probably as a sign of respect for the dead. Me. I walked home. When I got there, Sarah was waiting on the porch, an expectant look on her face. I didn't say a word. I just walked past her, grabbed one end of the mothership, and grunted. She understood immediately. She sighed, grabbed the other end, and together we performed the walk of shame. We shuffled my beloved couch off the porch and into the dark, spider-filled corner of the garage. It looked pathetic under the flickering fluorescent light, like a champion racehorse put out to pasture. I went back to the porch. Sarah had followed me. I'll look up some of those wicker sets tonight," she offered gently. "Maybe we can find one with red cushions for a pop of color?" I didn't answer. I just sat down on the top step of my now empty, barren, soulless porch. It was just a slab of concrete. The magic was gone. I cracked a beer and stared at the empty space. It was a void, a plaid, comfortable, Florida-stained void right in the middle of my life. I sat there for a long time, seething. The sun went down, the crickets started up, and I sat, a broken man on a naked porch, surrounded by the ruins of my comfort. And in that darkness, a tiny, cold, and deeply, deeply petty seed began to sprout. For 2 days I was in mourning. I'd come home from work and just stare at the empty spot on the porch. I'd see the faint outline where the mothership's legs used to be, like a chalk outline at a crime scene, which in a way it was. Sarah, bless her heart, was trying to be helpful. She kept casually leaving her laptop open on the kitchen counter, queued up to websites for patio pleasures and Wicker World. "Oh, look, Mark," she said on Friday night, pointing to a picture of something that looked like it was woven from brittle, angry twigs. "This one's weather-resistant, and it comes with taupe cushions." "Taupe," I mumbled, poking at my sad dinner. "That's just beige with a college degree. It looks like it's designed to give you splinters in your soul." "It's in keeping," she said, trying to make it a joke. "I don't want to be in keeping," I grumbled. "I want to be comfortable. I want the mothership. The mothership is in exile, honey. We have to move on." But I couldn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was tossing and turning, my back already aching in preemptive sympathy for the wicker splinter hell couch that was in my future. At 2:00 a.m., I gave up. I padded downstairs, poured myself a generous 2 fingers of whiskey, and grabbed the one thing that could give me answers. The Crestview Meadows HOA Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions. It was a 3-inch thick, vinyl-bound monstrosity that we'd been given at our closing. I'd never read it. No one had. I'd just used it as a very effective doorstop. Tonight, I was going in. I sat at the kitchen table, the only light coming from the small lamp over the sink. I had the bylaws, my whiskey, and a yellow highlighter. "If you know the enemy, and know yourself," I muttered, channeling my inner Sun Tzu, "you need not fear the result of 100 battles." I flipped to the section I'd memorized from the letter, Section 4, Architectural Control. I started reading, and good God, it was a journey into the mind of a madman. There were rules about the angle of satellite dishes. There were rules about the percentage of your lawn that could be non-grass. There was a whole subsection on holiday decorations that specified the exact number of blinking light units allowed per shrub. But I was on a mission. I found it. Bylaw 4.7b, Porch and Patio Aesthetics. I read the words Carol had used against me, but this time I read the whole thing. "All porch and patio furniture must be," I sipped my whiskey. 1. Designed specifically for outdoor use. Okay, I thought. The mothership was, but Carol argued it wasn't. So the next thing needs to be undeniably for outdoor use. 2. Maintained in good condition, free of rust, rot, or significant fading. The Florida stain killed me here. Good condition. That's subjective. But the next thing? It'll be pristine, or at least classic. 3. Not constitute a public nuisance or safety hazard. Easy. My couch was a hazard to no one, except maybe Carol's blood pressure. 4. Be in keeping with the general aesthetic of the community. This was the one. The gray, fuzzy, "I win because I say so" clause. In keeping. Community aesthetic. What did that even mean? I leaned back, swirling the whiskey in my glass. What is always outside, what is designed for outdoor use, never rots and belongs in a community. My eyes drifted past the sink, out the window, toward the dark, sleeping street. And then, it hit me. It hit me like a 400-pound chunk of cast iron. Community. What is more community than a park? And what's in a park? I shot up so fast I nearly knocked over my chair. "A park bench," I whispered to the empty kitchen. It was so simple. It was so perfect. It was so terrible. It's 100% designed for outdoor use. It's the definition of outdoor use. It's maintained in good condition because it's made of iron and solid Fietzing wood. It's not a nuisance, and in keeping with the general aesthetic of the community. Our community is called Crestview Meadows. Meadows! It's practically a park. A park bench isn't just in keeping, it's themed. I was a genius, a sleep-deprived, whiskey-fueled, petty genius. But wait, she'd just make me move it again. She'd find another bylaw. Unapproved installation or something. I went back to the binder, my fingers flying. I was buzzing. I scanned the index. Fences. Fixtures. Foundations. There was nothing. Nothing about securing furniture. Nothing about bolting or chaining things. But I found Bylaw 12.1, Security and Property. And there it was. Residents are responsible for taking adequate measures to secure all personal property against theft, damage, or weather-related incidents. Adequate measures. Securing personal property. Against theft. I was going to secure my new bench. I was going to secure it so hard. I ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, and burst into the bedroom. "Sarah?" "Humph. What?" she mumbled, rolling over. "Is the house on fire?" "I've got it," I said, flicking on the light. She groaned and buried her head under a pillow. "Mark, it's 3:00 a.m. Go to sleep." "No, listen. A park bench." A muffled, "What?" came from under the pillow. "A park bench! For the porch!" I was pacing at the foot of the bed, vibrating with pure, unadulterated inspiration. A real one! A big, heavy, black, cast-iron, municipal-grade park bench! She slowly lowered the pillow, squinting at me. "You're insane. You're sleep-deprived. Go back to bed." "No, think about it. It checks all the boxes. Designed for outdoor use? Check. Community aesthetic? It's a park bench in Crestview Meadows. Check." She was starting to wake up now. I could see the gears turning. "Okay, so you put a park bench on the porch. Carol will just fine you for, I don't know, impersonating a public space." "Ah," I said, holding up a finger. "That's the genius part. The pièce de résistance." I explained my plan. I explained Bylaw 12.1. I explained my new interpretation of theft prevention. I told her about the chains. Sarah stared at me. Her expression went from confused to horrified to impressed. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "Oh, Mark," she whispered, "you are a terrible, terrible man." "So you're in?" "I'm not in," she said, pulling the covers back up. "Just try to find one that's on sale." I didn't go back to sleep. I grabbed my laptop, went back downstairs, and with a fresh glass of whiskey started searching. Municipal supply surplus auctions. It took me 4 days. 4 days of obsessive, caffeine-fueled bidding on websites that looked like they were designed in 1998. I was bidding against landscaping companies, actual city park departments, and, I assume, other suburban husbands in the middle of their own petty wars. Finally, I won. The description read, Item 47B, 1 Classic-style municipal park bench. 72 length. Cast-iron frame, recycled composite slats. As is, approx. Weight, 400 pounds. I paid extra for delivery. A week later, a giant flatbed truck, the kind that usually hauls construction equipment, rumbled down our quiet suburban street. The driver, a guy with a neck the size of a tree trunk, hopped down. "Henderson?" he grunted. That's me, I said, trying to look casual. He looked at the manifest, then at my house, then back at the manifest. You're sure? This is a commercial-grade bench. I like my porch sitting to be durable, I said. He just shook his head, muttered, "Whatever, pal," and used a hydraulic lift to lower the bench, which was strapped to its own pallet onto my driveway. It landed with a bone-shaking thud. It was magnificent. It was big, it was black, it was unapologetically heavy. Sarah came out. "My God," she said, "it's substantial." "It's perfect," I breathed. Now came phase 2. I could no longer do this alone. This wasn't a weekend warrior project. This required professionals. I looked up local handyman services. I skipped over Chad's Handy Dandy and 2 college kids with a truck. I needed someone who understood gravitas. I needed someone who wasn't afraid to drill into the very soul of my house. I found him. Sal's Odd Jobs and Concrete. The "and concrete" part was what sold me. I dialed the number. A gravelly voice answered on the second ring. "Sal's?" "Hi, Sal. My name is Mark. I have a kind of weird job." There was a heavy sigh on the other end. "Kid, I've bolted a stripper pole to a vaulted ceiling in a double-wide, and last week I used bubblegum and a coat hanger to fix a historic fountain. Nothing's weird. What's the problem?" I liked this guy already. "I need you to install a 400-pound park bench on my front porch." A beat of silence. "Just set it down?" "No, Sal," I said, my voice dropping. "I need it installed. I mean, permanently installed. I'm talking drilling into the concrete floor of the porch. I'm talking anchoring it to the main structural support columns." I took a breath. "Sal, I need chain. I'm thinking 1/2-inch thick, grade 70 transport chain. The kind they use to tie down bulldozers. I want this bench to survive a Category 5 hurricane. I want this bench to be the last thing standing after the apocalypse. I want this bench to be, for all intents and purposes, a new, load-bearing part of my house." There was a long, slow whistle on the other end. A moment of silence. The single word was filled with so much understanding, so much world-weary empathy, it almost brought a tear to my eye. "Her name is Carol," I said. "And she likes the color beige," Sal finished. "How did you know?" "I know the type, kid. They're my best customers. Me and my boy, we'll be there Thursday at 10. "Thursday at 10? "Perfect," I said. "That's right, when she's at water aerobics." "Attaboy," Sal grunted. "Oh, and kid?" "Yeah?" "We're not bringing the regular tools. We're bringing the Hilti." He hung up. Thursday at 10 a.m., a truck that looked like it had survived a war pulled up. Sal's Odd Jobs and Concrete was painted on the side with a picture of a cracked cement block. Sal got out. He was a barrel-chested man who looked like he'd been built, not born. With him was a younger, equally burly version of himself. "This is Little Sal," Sal said, pointing with his thumb. Little Sal, who was at least 6'4" and 280 pounds, just nodded. They didn't waste time. They surveyed the porch. "Them's the main columns?" Sal asked, slapping one of the big square posts. "That's right," I said. "And the floor's solid slab?" "Yep." "All right, Little Sal, get the Hilti and the security package." What followed was the most glorious, beautiful, loudest 4 hours of my life. The Hilti rotary hammer drill, when it bit into the concrete, sounded like a dragon clearing its throat. It was a righteous, window-rattling brrrrap. that echoed through the entire neighborhood. I saw curtains twitch. I saw my neighbor Dave, 2 doors down, pause his weed whacking. Sal and little Sal were artists. They drilled 4 deep holes in the concrete slab. They drilled 2 massive holes clear through the structural columns. They filled the holes with some kind of 2-part industrial epoxy that smelled like a chemical fire. They set 10-inch anchor bolts into the floor. Then came the pièce de résistance. Little Sal hauled out a length of black, greasy-looking half-inch chain that looked like it belonged on a battleship's anchor. They looped it around the bench's iron legs, bolted it to the floor anchors with massive, uncuttable-looking puck locks, and then ran 2 more lengths up, wrapping them around the support columns and padlocking them. It was art. At 1:45 p.m., Sal stepped back, wiping his hands on a rag. The noise had stopped. The silence was deafening. The bench was part of the house. It was not a piece of furniture. It was a fixture. It was an installation. "All right," Sal said, giving the chain a kick. It didn't rattle. It thunked. "That thing ain't going nowhere. That'll cost you." I handed him a wad of cash, plus a very healthy tip. "Sal," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "you're not a handyman. You're an artist, a poet of concrete and steel." Sal squinted at me, then looked at the bench, then back at me. A slow grin spread across his face. "Good luck, kid," he said. "Send me a picture of her face." They packed up their war rig and drove off, leaving me alone with my creation. My monument to malice. I went inside and got a beer. I sat down. The bench was terrible. It was rigid. The composite slats were hard. The angle of the back was scientifically designed to create new back problems. But I sat there, a grin spreading across my face. I was king of the world. The trap was set. I pulled 2 very tasteful, beige, 100% weatherproof cushions from a box and placed them on the bench. It was a gesture of good faith. "See, Carol, I can do in keeping." I sat. I waited. I'd been sitting for about 20 minutes, and my backside was already staging a full-scale rebellion. This bench was not built for human anatomy. It was built to discourage the homeless, pigeons, and apparently all forms of comfort. But I didn't care. I wasn't sitting for comfort. I was sitting for victory. I had a fresh, ice-cold beer in my hand. The sun was shining. It was 2:10 p.m., right on schedule. A white sedan, so clean it looked like it had been sterilized, glided around the corner. My heart started thumping. Showtime. I took a long, slow sip of my beer, affecting an air of casual, unbothered, bench-sitting guy. The white sedan slowed. It came to a complete, perfect stop, exactly parallel to my driveway. "Okay, she's stopping," I narrated in my head, a play-by-play for my own amusement. "She's processing. The beige visor-covered brain is attempting to compute the new data. She's squinting. I can't see her eyes behind the visor, but I can feel the rage. It's like a heat lamp. She's not moving. She's just staring." The car door opened. "And she's out! She's out of the car, folks! She's on the pavement! She left the car running in the middle of the street." "Oh, this is good. This is really good." Carol, her face a mask of pure, uncomprehending fury, power-walked onto my lawn. Sir Reginald, who was clearly not briefed on this mission, was skittering behind her, his little legs a blur. She stopped at the edge of the porch, about 10 feet away. She was vibrating. I don't mean figuratively. I mean, I could see her visor trembling. "What?" she sputtered. Her voice was an octave higher than usual, like a distressed teapot. "What is that?" I smiled, the friendliest, most neighborly smile I could muster. "This?" I said, patting the hard, unforgiving armrest. "It's my new bench, Carol. Isn't it a beaut? It's cast iron, very durable. Got it from a municipal auction. Recycled materials, too, very green." She didn't respond. Her eyes were darting. They went from the bench to the base to the chains. Her face went from red to a sort of pale, blotchy white. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling with a rage so pure it was almost beautiful. "You chained it to your house!" She shrieked the last word. A nearby bird fell out of a tree. "Oh, that?" I said, looking at the half-inch transport chain as if I'd just noticed it. "That? Yes. Well, you know, can't be too careful these days." I stood up and walked over, giving the chain an affectionate pat. "Theft, Carol. It's a real problem. This bench, as you can see, is a high-value item. Solid cast iron. And I was reading the bylaws. Always a good idea, right? And I stumbled on good old 12.1. Residents are responsible for securing personal property. I'm just being a responsible resident, Carol. Securing my property. Adequately." She was sputtering now. She was trying to form words, but all that came out was a series of small, gasping sounds. This is a structural modification," she finally managed to yell. "Oh, no, I countered, holding up a hand. "Sal, my contractor, very professional, concrete specialist. He assured me. The chains are only wrapped around the columns, not into them. No structural changes whatsoever. The anchors," I said, pointing to the floor, "are just in the porch slab, totally cosmetic." It's a nuisance," she tried again, her eyes wild. "A nuisance? Carol, it's silent. It's stable. It's not bothering anyone. In fact, I'd say it's less of a nuisance than, say, I don't know, 50 garden gnomes?" That was a low blow, but I was in the zone. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely unlock it. This is Tacky," I gasped. I put my hand on my heart. "Tacky. Carol, I am shocked. Tacky is such a subjective word. You used that on my last couch, and I took your note to heart. I found something that was the opposite of tacky. This, my friend," I said, sweeping my arm toward the bench, "is municipal grade. It is classic. It is public-facing. It is the definition of in keeping with a community aesthetic. We live in Crestview Meadows, for crying out loud. This is a park bench. It's practically themed." She just stared at me, her mouth open. She had no response. I had out-bylawed the queen of bylaws. I had used her own gray area, subjective bulls, T-logic against her. She started taking pictures. Dozens of them. From every conceivable angle. She took pictures of the bolts. She took pictures of the chains. She took a close-up picture of the padlock, which had brutal stamped on the side. You will be hearing from our lawyers," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "This is not over, Mr. Henderson. This is not over." She turned, yanking Sir Reginald so hard his feet left the ground for a second, and stormed back to her car, which was, I noted with satisfaction, still running in the middle of the street. She slammed the door, revved the engine, and peeled out, laying a tiny 1-inch strip of angry rubber on the asphalt. I stood there on my porch. The silence that descended was absolute. I walked back to the bench. I sat down. I picked up my beer. It was without a doubt the best beer I had ever tasted in my entire life. The next day, a certified letter arrived. This one wasn't cream-colored. This one was from a law firm, Dribble, Dribble, and Scoff, and it was full of much more expensive words. Heretofore, abatement, injunction, and my personal favorite, cease and desist. It was a very official-sounding threat. It basically said that my bench was a non-approved permanent structure and a deliberate and flagrant violation of the aesthetic harmony, her favorite phrase, of the community. I had 48 hours to abate the nuisance, i.e., get out a blowtorch, or they would pursue all legal remedies. I was supposed to be scared. I was supposed to be intimidated by the fancy letterhead. I used it as a coaster. I was not worried. Carol had shown her hand. She was moving from HOA rules to legal threats, which meant she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on with the bylaws. This was just a scare tactic. The 48 hours came and went. I spent them, quite happily, on my horribly uncomfortable bench, waving to my neighbors. They'd all heard. The Benchgate saga was the hottest gossip in Crestview Meadows since the raccoon in the community pool incident of 22. Then, on Saturday afternoon, Carol escalated. She went nuclear. I was out there, trying to find a position on the bench that didn't actively compress a spinal disc, when a car rolled up. But it wasn't Carol's sterile white sedan. It was a police car. A full-on lights on the top to protect and serve on the side. City police cruiser. It pulled up right in front of my house. Oh, hell. My blood ran cold. This was not part of the plan. I had prepared for lawyers. I had not prepared for cops. What had she told them? I watched, mouth dry, as 2 officers got out. One was older, with the classic, "I've seen it all and I'm tired of it all" mustache and gut. The other one was a rookie, looked like he was barely 21, all eager and alert. The veteran, whose name tag read Miller, looked at his notepad, then at my house, then at the bench, and let out the single, most profound sigh I have ever heard. They walked up the driveway. I stayed seated. "Be cool, Mark. You've done nothing illegal." Across the street, I saw her. Carol. She was on her porch, arms crossed, watching the whole thing. The T-Rex watching the raptors do her dirty work. "Afternoon, officers," I said, my voice only shaking a little. "Sir, are you Mr. Henderson?" Officer Miller asked, his voice pure gravel. "That I am, officer. Something I can help you with?" Miller looked at his notepad again, as if trying to believe what was written on it. "Sir, we got a dispatch call about an unsafe structure." The rookie, Johnson, chimed in. "And a possible hostage situation?" I blinked. I looked at my bench. I looked at the empty cushions. I looked back at the cops. "A what?" I burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. "A hostage situation? Officer, the only hostage here is my weekend, and you two are kind of contributing to that." Officer Miller's eyes met mine. He did not smile, but the corners of his mustache twitched. The dispatcher clarified that the hostage was the bench, that it was being held against its will. Officer Johnson coughed, a sound that was suspiciously close to a snicker. "Ah," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. This wasn't a criminal complaint. This was a crazy complaint. The bench! Yes, well, as you can see, she's a beauty, and she's all mine. Officer Miller walked onto the porch. He was now in the investigation phase. He walked over to the bench. He knocked on the cast iron side. Thunk. Then he grabbed the chain. He gave it a hard professional yank. The chain did not move. The house did not move. The bench did not move. He leaned in, looking at the links. Huh, he said, mostly to himself. That's grade 70, half-inch. You in transport, hauling? Just a hobby, officer, I said. Look, is this thing illegal? Because I read the city ordinances. No public easement, not blocking a right-of-way, not a safety hazard, unless you're Carol. Miller stood up, turning to face me. He looked at the bench. He looked at my house. He looked over his shoulder at Carol, who was now practically levitating with anticipation. And a tiny, beautiful smirk appeared on his face. Sir, he said in his official cop voice, as far as the city is concerned, that's your bench. It is? It is. As long as it's not on public property, and you're not using it to, chain an actual hostage, it's a civil matter. He tapped the bench with his flashlight. It's ugly as sin, but it ain't illegal. You're not in violation of any city code, I know. It's a civil matter, I repeated, savoring the words. Thank you, officer. Don't thank me, he grumbled. Now I gotta go talk to her. He trudged off my porch and started walking across the street. Officer Johnson, the rookie, stayed behind for a second. So, he whispered, gesturing to the bench. HOA? Her name is Carol, I whispered back. Thought so, he grinned. My aunt had one just like her in her subdivision. She tried to get my uncle's unapproved grill fined. It was a grill. Godspeed, Johnson, I said. You too, sir. You too. He ran off to join Miller, who was now standing on Carol's lawn. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, but I could see Miller's "I'm a tired cop and you're wasting my time" body language. I heard a few key phrases drift across the wind. Not a criminal matter, ma'am. Please do not call 911. Bylaws are not laws. Have a nice day, ma'am. The cops got back in their car. As they drove away, I saw Officer Johnson in the passenger seat. He was looking at his lap, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. This was a massive public victory. Carol hadn't just lost. She'd been scolded. By the law. I sat back down on my throne. The view was getting better and better. The police incident was the shot heard round the neighborhood. Benchgate was no longer a quiet skirmish. It was a full-blown revolution. The fallout was immediate. My status in the neighborhood changed overnight. I was no longer Mark from 4B. I was bench guy. I was the resistance. The neighborhood, which had long cowered under Carol's beige-ocracy, was divided. The old guard, Carol's cronies on the board, were appalled. But the silent majority? They were on my side. It started subtly. A guy I barely knew, Dave, the one who was always mowing, gave me a crisp, silent nod as he drove by. The Millers, of wind chime fame, dropped off a six-pack of craft beer on my porch. No note. None was needed. Then I got the first anonymous letter. It was slipped into my mailbox, written on a piece of notebook paper. "You are my hero," it read. She made me repaint my mailbox twice. She called Manatee Gray too whimsical. Stand your ground! Someone else left a small, plastic-wrapped muffin on the bench. It was a weird, lumpy, bran-looking thing, but I appreciated the spirit. Carol, on the other hand, was in silent running mode. She'd been publicly humiliated. She didn't make eye contact. She didn't power walk past my house. She drove past, her windows up, her gaze fixed firmly ahead. She was biding her time. She was waiting for the big one. The quarterly HOA meeting. It was scheduled for the first Tuesday of the month, held in the multi-purpose room of the community clubhouse. A room that smelled like bad coffee, industrial-grade cleaner, and broken dreams. The place was packed. Usually these meetings were attended by Carol, the other 4 board members, and maybe one sad resident arguing about a dead shrub. Tonight? It was standing room only. The Millers were there. Manatee gray mailbox, Bob was there. The loud music teenagers were there. The entire neighborhood had shown up. They weren't just here for the free, stale Timbits. They were here for the main event. I walked in with Sarah. The room went quiet. I felt like a gladiator walking into the Coliseum. I gave a general nod and took a seat in the back. The meeting started with the usual nonsense. Minutes from the last meeting. Treasurer's report on the pool skimmer repair budget. Then Carol, sitting at the head of the folding table, her face set like granite, tapped the microphone. We now move to new business. Item 9A. Review of Property 4B, the Henderson property. It's showtime. She clicked a button on a remote. A projector flickered to life, and a giant picture of my beautiful bench, chained to my porch, appeared on the wall. There were audible gasps. Carol had a PowerPoint. As you can see, she began, her voice dripping with manufactured solemnity, we have a situation. A resident has seen fit to desecrate his property with a non-approved installation. She clicked. A close-up of the chain. This is a structural modification, in clear violation. It's not, I called out from the back. The contractor wrapped it. No drilling into the columns. She ignored me. It is a clear safety hazard. It's not, yelled Officer Johnson's uncle, the grill guy. It's a bench. Carol was losing the room. She clicked to the next slide. It is an eyesore. The room was quiet. This was her kill shot. If we let this stand, she said, her voice rising. What's next? What is the logical conclusion? Cars on lawns, chickens? Someone in the back yelled, I like chickens. This is a gateway to total neighborhood anarchy, she finished, pointing a trembling finger at the screen. I make a motion that the board approve a forced abatement measure to be funded by the reserve and to place a full lien on the property for the costs of removal. The room erupted. People were yelling. The board members looked terrified. I stood up. Sarah squeezed my hand. Mark, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. The room went quiet again. My name is Mark. I'm bench guy, from 4B. I walked to the front, picking up the spare copy of the bylaws from the sign-in table. Folks, neighbors, my name is Mark, and yes, I put a bench on my porch. I did it because my couch, which I loved, was deemed, and I quote, tacky, by one person. I looked at Carol. I read the rules. I'm not a lawyer, but I can read. The problem wasn't my couch. The problem was bylaw 4.7b, which is so vague, it gives one person the power to fine anyone for anything they don't personally like. I held up the bylaws. So I found something that wasn't subjective. This bench is solid. It's secure, as per bylaw 12.1. It's municipal grade, so it's designed for outdoor use. And it's 100% in keeping with the community aesthetic of Crestview Meadows. Bob, Manatee Gray Bob, stood up. He's right, Carol. You fined me for my unapproved mailbox paint. You said it was too whimsical. It was Manatee Gray. "And you told me my basketball hoop was a public nuisance," yelled another guy. "You told me my rose bushes were non-indigenous." The dam had broken. For 10 minutes, the room was filled with the airing of petty grievances. Carol had overplayed her hand, not just with me, but with everyone. Finally, one of the other board members, a quiet woman named Brenda, held up her hand. "Carol," she said, I think the motion to remove the bench is maybe an overreach." "Seconded," mumbled another board member. Carol looked betrayed. "We have to vote," she demanded. "Okay," Brenda said. "All in favor of the motion to forcefully remove the bench at 4B?" Only Carol and one other guy, a dude who I swear was her nephew, raised their hands. "All opposed?" My hand went up. Sarah's hand went up. Brenda's hand went up. The other two board members' hands went up. "Motion fails," Brenda said, looking stunned. 3-2. The room was silent for a second, and then it burst into applause. Not a roar, but a solid, sustained, "Thank God the witch is dead" applause. Carol's face was a mask I will treasure in my memory forever. It was a perfect storm of rage, shock, and utter defeat. She grabbed her remote, clicked off the projector, and snapped, "Meeting adjourned." The story ends where it began. Almost. It's Saturday. The sun is shining. I'm on my porch. I'm on my bench. Sarah comes out, hands me a cold beer, and a very, very thick stadium-style cushion. She sits down next to me, wincing slightly as her tailbone meets the composite slats. "Happy now, you psycho?" she asks, kissing me on the head. I take a long sip of the beer. I shift my weight on the cushion. I look out at my kingdom. "Honestly," I say, "it's terrible. My back is killing me. I'm pretty sure I have a compression fracture from sitting here for 2 hours." "But," she prompts. I lean back, prop my feet up on the unmovable, uncomfortable, permanent, and glorious cast iron frame. I look across the street, to Carol's house. There's a new item on her lawn, a for sale sign. I take another long, slow sip. "But the view," I say, a grin spreading across my face, "the view is spectacular."